Now we're at the beginning of the second part. I'm ultimately going to try to get you to this part. And so in order to do that, I'm going to erase the layers that I just created. Things are going to be a little bit different than they are in my recorded Canvas version, and that's merely because of the fact that the trace layer and stuff that I'm working from turns out to be having slightly different proportions than the ones that I gave you. But it'll be a good lesson in point because you'll be able to see how I make the changes on the fly. I'm going to pause this for a second and I'll restart. So here's where we picked up last. We had created the center ring, and I have renamed mine layer 02 as it is on the Canvas version, and I've also included the black background layer, which I mentioned in the Canvas version but didn't include in my last instructions for the Camtasia version. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to create another layer, and this one's going to be called center ring, and that's going to be this portion right here. If you can see my cursor moving around, I'm going to shut off and lock up layer 02. It's already locked, and that way that we can see all the way down to the trace layer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my stroke color here, double click that, open up and change that to 6 zeros. That should be down here. For some reason it doesn't want to do that. There we go. Okay. And now I have black. And I'm going to use my shape tool, the ellipse, and by holding it down here in the center and using my Alt and Shift key, I should be able to get my new circle to emanate from the center. My stroke might not be set to one point at this point. It may be due to something else that I was messing with a moment ago. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to open it from the center so that the ring itself applies directly over the center. And as you can see, no, it's not set to a 1-point stroke. It is set to an odd size, 18.75. I'm going to change that, and I think I found out earlier that even a 42-point stroke isn't big enough for this particular example because, as I said, the proportions are slightly different. So I'm going to change that to a 42-point stroke. That gets so that it's more or less corresponding to the size of the center ring in the trace layer. All right, now what we need to do is we need to create another layer, and this one's going to be called the crescent rings. Spell here. There we go. I'm going to make sure that I lock up the center ring so that I can't work in that. That would be the rings that correspond to the inside of these crescents. And I had a little bit of trouble with those as well in the design that I was doing a few moments ago, and I'll show you what I mean. Again, this is all good because it'll show you that in every Illustrator document that you're working on, things can vary just a little bit. So I'm going to open up my center, my color here on my stroke, and change that to white. There we go. And if we remember correctly, my stroke size was set to 42 inches, and I don't want that. I want something much smaller, but I'm going to go ahead and let it open as a 42-point stroke rather. I'm going to do Alt and Shift and create a new one from here. I'm going to try to get it to come in inside of that crescent up there, and of course it's going to open up way bigger than I need because the stroke is set to 42. And I think what I had arrived at before was 18 point, worked or looked like it worked pretty well. Now the critical thing here is that what we have to do is we have to turn on layer 2 because what we're looking for is a white ring that will interrupt this detail right here. We don't want to see any of the center ring protruding beyond the edges of the crescent. That may mean that what's wrong here is that my particular ellipse or circle that I'm using to create the effect on the inside of the crescent isn't big enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift to constrain it to a circle and bring that up in size a little bit so that it now corresponds in size and side to side of the inside of the crescent. Now that I have it the size that I want, I'm going to zoom back out and I'm going to do edit and copy and edit and paste in place because I want it to stay right where it is, and then I can use my arrow keys on my keyboard to nudge it down to where it needs to be and then over till I get it in position for it to now block out what I want it to block out over here, which is the center ring there and there. Now that I have it there, I can then do edit and copy, edit, and again paste in place. And now I should be able to just move it over to the one on the right, move it a little bit beyond and then back and down a little bit, which clues me into the fact that the one on the left is probably in the wrong position. So I'm going to go over here, highlight that one and move it back until I see the portion up here, nudge it down until I get it right in the right spot, and then I'm going to back out and take a look at it. That looks about right. So now we have created the center ring and we have created the crescents that compose the center ring. Okay, so now what I need to do is to shut off this layer. I'm going to go to the crescent rings layer and highlight them and do edit, copy. I'm going to then go to the center ring area, unlock it, lock the crescent ring area again, and then go into the center ring area, shut that off, and then I'm going to do, while I'm on the center ring, I'm going to do edit, paste in place, which puts those rings together. So now everything is combined on the center ring area. So I've got the center ring and the crescent rings on the right layer. And if I turn on my my background layer, everything looks right. So now what I need to do is I need to take the center ring area and make sure, I'm going to turn that off. I really don't need the center ring area anymore. I don't do this in the video that I showed you. I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to take the center ring area and I'm going to do, with it unlocked, I'm going to do edit, copy. Oh, I don't have it highlighted. Hold on. To go here and go around the whole thing and do edit, copy, and go back to layer 2, shut this off, and then do edit, paste in place. It's telling me that I'm putting a layer into a layer that's was locked. Anyway, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the center ring area and throw it away, which gets me back to one single layer that has the whole design on it. The center ring, the crescent rings, and the crescents themselves are now all on layer 2. So that will conclude the second part of this. As I said, it's a bit different than the way that I showed it to you on the Canvas copy from class, because as I said, the proportions in the trace layer turned out to be somewhat different. But again, it shows you that you can change things on the fly. The trace layer is still on. I'm going to shut it off, and you can see this is what our design now looks like. The only thing we have left to do, which is the third part, would be the area that's the detail in the center, and that will be in the next video. Okay? All for now. Talk to you later.